Okay, hello and welcome to today's lesson. For your starter, I'm going to ask you to work in your exercise books. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to create a list of all the key terms that you've used for your blockhead project. Now, when I say key terms, I'm talking about all of our subject-specific terms, and that means things like the tools, equipment, and the materials that you've used for your blockhead project. So the title for the starter is Key Terms, and please do add today's date on your page as well. I'm going to give you 2 minutes to create this bullet point list of all the tools, equipment and materials you can think of. And after those 2 minutes, I'm going to welcome you to talk to the people next to you to share and compare what you've got down. So don't sit idle, guys. Give it a go. Even if you can't remember the actual words, write what you think it might be called. Okay, so 2 minutes, give it a go. Okay, now that you've had 2 minutes of silent work, what I'd like you to do now, for 1 minute or two, speak to the person next to you, share and compare your work. What tools, equipment and materials have they written down and why? When did you use those? Start to have a nice conversation about the work in front of you. 1 or 2 minutes, starting now. So I'm going to go ahead and assume that your books are absolutely full of those key terms. So key terms are subject-specific words that relate to us and our blockhead project. So they're more commonly tools, equipment, materials, and sometimes processes as well. So in the green box on the screen, you should be able to see a list of all the tools that you've used. So I've not put processes or materials, I've just put the tools only, and that's quite a long list. So I'm going to read out a few of them. We've got pencil, tri-square, ruler, brass back saw, abrasive paper, commonly known as sandpaper, bench hook, pillar drill. Loads and loads are on that list. How many do you have? Do you have anything different? Raise your hand if you do. So, below is a list in the yellow box of the stages of make. And this list is basically the headings of all the different stages of make that we followed to make our blockhead. All of these tools were used in one or more of those stages. So with the people next to you on your table groups, what I'd like you to do, I'd like you to see if you can match up which tools were used for which stage of make. Now, to do this, you might want to color code your tools. So, for example, you might want to write out the stages of make 1 to 6, and then you might want to color code them. So you might want to make marking out. You might want to make that red in color. And then as you go through your own list, and if you're missing some of these, by all means, please write them down. And then what you can do is you can underline or highlight which tools you think were used for that stage of make. So for marking out, I think I used a pencil, but also for shaping the neck, I think I also used a pencil. So I'm also going to underline that in blue. So like I said, some of these tools you may have used for more than one stage. So talk to people next to you. I'm going to give you a good 5 minutes for this, guys. A good 5 minutes. Off you go. So, I hope you had a really good discussion. I hope you've got a lot of things color coded. I hope you've managed to reflect back on all the processes, all those stages of makes that we've completed since the very beginning of the blockhead. So what we're going to do now, what I'm going to do now, for some of the stages of make, I'm going to do a quick recap as to what we did and what we used to do it. Okay, so the first part of any project is your marking out. So for this stage we used a pencil, a tri-square and a ruler, and the material we had was a length of pine, so a long length of pine. And the first thing we had to do, using that ruler and a pencil, we had to measure and mark out the 3 pieces that we actually needed for our blockhead. So if you cast your minds back, we needed 2 long lengths of pine and 1 short middle piece. So to do that, we used our ruler, We measured, we used the pencil to make a little mark, and then we used the tri-square to make sure that we got that beautiful 90-degree angle from the edge. But what we also had to remember, year 7, was we had to leave ourselves a little gap. We had to leave a gap in between each piece so that when we cut our pieces apart, we had a little bit of wiggle room. So if we went a little bit wrong, we had a little bit of space to correct it by using the belt sander or abrasive paper just to level off the ends. The next stage is cutting the material to size. So for this we used a bench hook, we used a tenon saw, and we may have even used a belt sander just to level off those ends to make them even more accurate. So the bench hook we needed for the security to hold our work in place, and the tenon saws, which had the really big teeth. Tenon saws are a lot better for this process because it cuts far more quickly. The next stage of this project was to shape the legs. Now to do this we used a coping saw and a piece of abrasive paper. So just in case you can't remember, if you draw your attention to the bottom image at the bottom of the slide, the void is this square that you cut out, and that's what gives the legs that definition. You can clearly see what a leg is and where the foot is and the end of the body. So it was a really important part of our blockhead process. This is quite a tricky step, it takes some time to get used to it, but once you really get that skill going and you develop it, it becomes a lot easier over time. The next stage, and probably one of the most exciting stages, is creating the actual body. Now, this is one of the most exciting stages because you start to see your blockhead come together. And for this, we used some PVA glue, we used a vise or a G-clamp, and masking tape. So I say this is probably one of the most easiest stages, but quite a few of us had a little bit of difficulty because we forgot a couple things. The middle bit needed to be the smallest part. That's not the end of the world. But some of us forgot that the feet need to point in the same direction. Now, I say some of us forgot this year 7. I too have forgotten this in the past when doing a demo in front of my whole class, and I've had to undo the work, scrape off the glue, and try again. And that is absolutely fine. That's the whole point of DT. It's learning from your mistakes and developing problem-solving skills. So although it is one of the easiest stages, some of us sometimes made a few errors. Shaping the neck. For some, quite a scary process, mainly because it involved the use of a chisel. You also needed a vise or a G-clamp to hold your work in place, and a brass back saw. So after marking out the neck once again, all the way around, you then needed to use the brass back saw to cut the 2 lines of the neck. So the 2 lines, I mean the ones that actually give the height. Whoops, my line went a bit wonky there, but I think you get the idea. And then from there, once you cut your 2 lines, you use the brass back saw again to cut 2 or 3 more, as many as you can, because that helped to weaken the pine, so that when you came along with your chisel, you removed it like a pro within seconds. Quite a scary process for some of us because we're using a new tool and a new skill, but we really excelled with this and you did a fantastic job. So well done. You should be really, really proud of the amount of effort and the skill that you've developed just from this one process alone. So we have learned a lot during this project, especially those key terms. But we don't always appreciate that they are actually key terms. And just a little reminder, guys, tools, equipment, materials, they are all key terms, subject-specific words. So terms that you're less likely to use in other subjects, but also terms that are really specific to our project, which our tools, equipment, and materials were. So this is what I'd like you to do. Your main task for today is to create a stage of make on a piece of A4 paper. Now we are running this project again for Year 7s next year, and when a student is absent, it makes it really difficult for them to catch up on practical lessons because they need a lot of one-to-one help and support, which we are always willing and able to give. But by them having a stage of make beautifully laid out on a piece of A4 paper, which shows them how to actually complete specific parts of the blockhead, it just gives them a bit more confident. So that's what I'd like you to do. By using notes and sketches, I'd like you to fully explain a stage of make. Now you guys are doing this on a paper, but I just wanted to show you a waggle of one that I've completed in the past for a different project. This is my stage of make for something called lamination. Now obviously I've used photos here, but you'll have to use some lovely little sketches. But all I've done is I've broken down the stage of make into 4 stages. 4 despite 3 being there twice, and for each part I've just used short sentences. I know they don't look it, guys, I promise you these are short. I've used short sentences to explain each step of that stage. So number 1, I've put, on one piece of flexi-ply squirt a thin line of glue down the middle. Next, spread the glue evenly over the flexi-ply surface using a glue spreader or your finger. Next, sandwich the 2 flexi-ply pieces together, make sure the glue goes in the middle. So I've explained those 3 steps for that first part of the stage, and I've got these lovely images that show the direction as well, that show those stages. So this is something I'd like you to give a go, using pencils and pens. If you want to add some colour, feel free. This is just another stage of make for a different project. This is the measuring and the marking out. So again, I've split the stage of make into 4 parts, and I've added short instructions for each part so that anybody following them has a clear idea of what to do and how to complete that stage of make. So remember, that's the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to give a student who's been absent more knowledge and more guidance as to how to complete the practical element that they've just missed. So that's your main task, Year 7. Using notes and sketches, create a stage of make. And the stages of make are listed again at the bottom. Now you have all the key terms that you need in your book because we did that as our starter. Give it a go on A4 paper. And the ones that I think are the most clear and most accurate, I would love to photocopy and laminate for next year, so I can use them as an additional teaching support guide.